With Kyle Larson, as you say, 2021, that was a heck of a finale. Will that be a factor, do you feel, when push comes to shove this weekend? The fact that he knows how to win a title?
Chase Briscoe hasn't won a title. Denny Hamlin hasn't won a title. William Byron hasn't won a title. But they have all competed for a championship in some form or fashion. There are other groups of 4 drivers that I think maybe, sometimes, experience, been here, done that, can stand out. But these 4 drivers, again, in some form or fashion, have all competed for a championship. But I also, Lawrence, hand to God, I would not be surprised, to your point, if the champion this weekend didn't win the race.
Welcome to the RACER Debrief. I'm Lawrence Foster, and joining us this week in anticipation of NASCAR's Championship 4 weekend, we have RACER's resident NASCAR expert, Kelly Crandall, to set everything up for what should be a superb weekend of racing in Phoenix. Kelly, the Final 4 has been resolved, and it's a bit of a strange one, based on who isn't in there as well as who is in there. It's kind of 4 drivers, 2 Hendrick, 2 Joe Gibbs, a guy who should have won a championship by now, a guy who maybe, could be a sort of an upset sleeper winner, a past champion, and the reigning Daytona 500 champion. So just set the scene for us on who's in it, ready for the Championship 4 this weekend.
I think what stands out first is that of the 4 drivers, it could have been any combination of any of the drivers we ended up with that were left in the round of 8, right? I feel like, and the drivers have said it too, this was probably one of the most competitive rounds of 8 when you look at the makeup of the drivers and teams that we've had. So I think any combination of what we would have ended up with of the final 4 drivers would have been just as entertaining or just as competitive, or whatever word you want to use. I do find it fascinating that it comes down to kind of 2 of the big 3 teams, which we talked about in our last podcast, right? The big 3 of Team Penske, Joe Gibbs, Rick Hendrick. And it comes down to a 2-on-2 organizational battle here between Hendrick and Joe Gibbs. And in saying that, we don't see a Penske car in the Final 4, which is the first time since 2021. So of course they'd won the last 3 championships. So that's, I feel like, as big a storyline as what we do end up with. So you laid it out there kind of perfectly. When you look at this makeup of drivers, you have William Byron, who was the regular season champion, the 24 team that has just been so rock solid this year. Their numbers, their consistency, just the way they put their heads down and go to work, and what they've done this year, as I mentioned, winning the regular season championship with just incredible consistency. Mm-hmm. Kyle Larson, the only driver of the 4 who's won a championship before. So I guess you could say he's kind of, in that regard, the veteran of the group, looking for a second title and how that would just elevate him into even more elite company in the series. Denny Hamlin, a veteran of the series that's just, I don't know if there's a bigger story out of this Final 4, because of him being the guy that still here all these years later is still looking for that first championship. Yep. And then Chase Briscoe, the guy that what he doesn't know, he doesn't know. And what's fascinating there is, while this is his first Championship 4 appearance, he's done this before, competed for a championship in the Xfinity Series. And the team that he has around him is such an interesting dynamic, because you've got a few new faces in that group. But you also have faces, and a lot of familiar faces in that group who have competed for championships before with Martin Truex Jr., individuals who, as James Small told me, some of who are still kind of haunted by the ones they didn't win over the last couple of years. So it's a great makeup. I think that this, again, will be very entertaining. It will be very fascinating. And the one thing I think that will stand out the most, Lawrence, in all of this, and I believe it was Christopher Bell who said it yesterday after he was eliminated at Martinsville, whoever of the 4 drivers who wins this championship, I would find it hard to believe that the argument would not be that they deserve it. I think anyone any one of these four clearly have been amongst the best of the best this year as a whole with their body of work. So that is what's going to stand out, I think, at Phoenix, is whoever wins it, it's going to be deserving. And I think, like anything, it's going to come down to the wire. So we're really set up quite nicely here to end the season like this.
Hi, quick timeout to tell you about something special. You are going to want to visit racer.com/bundle. RACER just dropped a bundle for real motorsports fans. It includes RACER Plus, the new streaming home for everything from WRC and Dakar to DTM, Crandall, the Isle of Man TT, drifting, and even these podcasts, all in one place. You name it. This is a full spectrum of racing, from grassroots to global, off-road to electric, 2 wheels or 4, and it's a spectacular deal. Head to racer.com/bundle to sign up now. All right, back to the show. As you say, the big storyline, the can he finally, Denny Hamlin, win? I find it amazing. His best finish, by the way, you will outstat me, but at least I know this one. His best finish, I think, was second back in 2010. Mm-hmm. You know, since then he's been there or thereabouts. Okay, last year 8th. It wasn't the greatest of seasons. But it almost feels that the law of averages says a guy with such a stellar career, 60 race wins, 3 Daytona 500s, it feels beyond bad luck that he hasn't landed one before now. I mean, what is different about this year? I mean, he's already got a win in this round of 8. He's definitely got the momentum. Can this be the year? And if so, what is the difference maker?
You know, that's a really good question. Of why would this year be different? And I don't know that I have an answer. And I got to be honest with you, Denny doesn't have an answer. He was actually asked about that over the weekend of why will this year be different? Why will this year be the year? And that's been the question every year since he started doing this in 2006, right? And certainly since we moved to a playoff format, because we touched on it in our last conversation of how many times he has been within a caution, within a tape on the grill at Homestead, within fuel mileage in 2000. You referenced 2010. That's the most memorable one because he led the point standings going into Homestead under a previous playoff format that we've had. But even in this elimination format, you know, I mentioned he was within a caution. You know, you go back to, I believe that was, I want to say it was 2021. You go back at Phoenix, and he and Martin Truex Jr., if my memory serves me correctly, really kind of had the field and the championship field covered that day. And it was a caution. It was a brake rotor from a car back in the pack that brought the caution out and changed, as we see, changed the dynamic of the race, right? There was I want to say it was 2019 at Homestead, where, in my opinion, I felt like he was the best car and the best team that day, he and Chris Gabehart. And Gabehart, you know, this is not a criticism on Gabehart. I don't think anybody faulted him for doing this, but it came down to a late race pit stop and Gabehart saying, we've got to push. We got to stay on the offensive, and just put a too big of piece of tape on the nose and overheated the engine. Right.
Right.
You know, so there's been so many moments that you could go back and look at of he could have, should have, maybe, you know, should be the champion.
This is RACER, your all-access pass to the best in motorsports, performance, and car culture. Get RACER Plus for live races, extended highlights, breaking news, and fan-favorite build and enthusiast shows, all in one place. From Formula Drift to off-road mayhem.
A full-blown nail-biter.
Supercars to grassroots brawls. Garages to rare collectors. Stream it all, anytime, anywhere. This is about machines and the people who move the culture forward. And when the screen fades, the story continues in RACER Magazine, a collectible trusted by champions, creators, and connoisseurs. Every page, a deeper dive into the soul of speed and performance. RACER Plus and RACER Magazine, the ultimate bundle. Built for the obsessed, powered by passion.
Kelly, this feels like, remember that these have always been new and unusual ways for Dale Earnhardt not to win the Daytona 500.
It is. It's very
this
similar.
almost feels that version with Denny Hamlin at championships.
It is very, very similar. And I think, that narrative and that story has been told for many, many years, right? I mean, all the things I just listed, there's so many more out there of things that have even kept. I was mentioning, ways that he lost a championship. Lawrence, you can go back and look at ways that kept him from even advancing into the championship race. The roof hatch flying up, coming unbuckled, flying up at Talladega one year in one of those races that kept him from advancing. Ross Chastain's Hail Melon a couple of years ago at Martinsville. Let's not forget, as great as that moment was, who did it knock out? Denny Hamlin.
That's right.
So there is that narrative that, you can look at somebody like Dale Earnhardt, all of the frustration and all of the variables, all of the things that kept him from winning the Daytona 500. It is very accurate that you can make the same case and have the same conversation around Denny Hamlin not winning a championship. But to your original point, I don't know why this year would be different. I got to admit, and I think we touched on it in our last conversation, if there's ever a year where it's going to happen, wouldn't it be this one, right? Wouldn't it be this one?
Be great.
Where, just because of all of the off-track stuff and everything that's going on.
Yeah. I mean, did Denny Hamlin's state of mind in terms of it feels there isn't extra pressure on Denny's part this year. He's on a roll. He goes in there sort of, top of the championship four. But it feels that he never basically reacts to the fact that, darn it, it's another year when I didn't do it. That sort of even keel approach seems to play into his hands.
Yeah.
He doesn't feel, we are sort of building up the pressure on Denny Hamlin, but I don't think that's reflected in Denny Hamlin's own mindset.
No, you're absolutely correct. I think that happens for sure. I think the narrative plays out more amongst we, the media, and the outsiders of the narratives that we craft. Whereas, at least outwardly, the things that Denny Hamlin says are, I'm at peace with my career. I wouldn't trade, things I've done in my career, and even to the point where he feels like that just making it to the championship four in this era of NASCAR, that is sometimes the season worth of accomplishment for a driver and a team. There's other drivers that feel differently. Joey Logano would tell you, no, if you make the championship four and don't win the championship, then it's a failure and it's useless. But somebody like Denny, as you bring up, is I think over time and the experience and how long he has done this has helped him really compartmentalize his career and what he's accomplished, his place in this sport, separate from just having that trophy. Now, he wants that trophy, right?
Oh, yeah.
But again, I think with time and maturity and experience, he has understood this is just the hand and the career that I have been dealt when it comes to the championship. But I still have accomplished way more than I ever thought I would in this sport. So it's an interesting balance for him. Whereas, as I said, I think for us in the media and outsiders, craft it more of like, he has to be, so incomplete without a championship or people use it as a criticism against him. But
sure. Yeah.
He again, at least outwardly, he looks at it different than the rest of us.
I mean, one thing as well for me is that if Denny does clinch on Sunday, it means that Mark Martin goes back to being the best NASCAR driver to never win a championship. So that's always good with me.
Yeah.
Staying on the JGR theme, then, as you say, Chase Briscoe, a guy who basically doesn't know what he doesn't know, held on there. Won at Talladega, punched his ticket into the championship four. As you said, it's a team where there's a few new faces, there's a few old faces. It's gel. But obviously, fundamentally, the biggest new face in there is the fact that this is Chase's first season with JGR after moving over from sort of Stuart Haas kind of winding itself down. Are you surprised at how quickly he sort of got the momentum and sort of, locked himself into that groove, which was very much a Martin Truex team and situation, and Chase basically grabbed it, kind of came out of the blocks flying, basically, says me mixing my metaphors.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I was surprised kind of how it's all come together. I'm not surprised at their success.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm surprised at how it's all come together in one season. And that's not a knock on Chase or that race team, but listen, the conversation that we've all had over the last couple of years when Martin was in that car, who is arguably probably going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, is the last couple of years for that team, it's been a struggle. It's been a little bit of a fight for that 19 team to win races, to get finishes that they deserve. Some of it, getting caught up in other things, but some of it's self-inflicted wounds. A lot was made about how James and Martin would communicate on the radio. So I think for me, it was, I know there's a lot of talent there. I think James Small is an incredible crew chief. That team, clearly, again, they've been together for a very long time, minus the new faces I mentioned, which is, I think there's only about, if I remember correctly, I think James said maybe there's 3 new faces of the
right.
whole. So there is talent there, and Chase Briscoe has talent. But in this sport, it's always a matter of how quickly does that talent come together.
Sure.
And for me, I think that's where I thought, okay, I expect them to go out and contend this year. I expect them to win a race, maybe 2. But I don't think I have any more expectations or high hopes for them, right? Because it was, going back to what I just said, it was kind of a lot of question marks of how is this all going to come together. I thought they would need, I guess, a longer runway. And really, when the year started, I had asked Chase repeatedly. I know other media members, we've talked to Chase so much this year. And the first half of the season, even all the way up to the Coca-Cola 600, post-race of the Coca-Cola 600, because I know I was one of the ones that asked the question, there was a lot of, they were just trying to get their feet underneath them. The team was trying to gel. Chase was not struggling, but he really had to take the time to adapt to driving a different race car. The team had to learn what he wanted in his race car. He had to learn how Joe Gibbs Racing goes about preparing and the things that are required of him. And so there was so much there that even the first half of the season, they were struggling to put complete races together. I don't think, I think the first 3 to 4 months of the season, you could not find a race weekend on the results sheet where they did not have some sort of hiccup, whether it was speeding penalties, pit road problems, Chase being involved in something, whatever it may be. They were just not putting together clean races. And then all of a sudden, I mentioned the Coke 600. That was when it was almost like the light bulb went off. And I don't know if it was just because of time and effort, and Chase had a Goodyear test that he participated in as well that gave him time behind the wheel. But the Coke 600 really was, I think, kind of the mark in the sand that from that point on is when you can tell, oh, they got to figure it out now.
Right.
And it started with putting clean races together. Then they knocked the win off at Pocono. So the confidence soared even more. And they were one of the top 5, the best teams in the series through the second half of the season leading into the postseason. So I don't know that I was, as I said, necessarily surprised at what they're doing. I am surprised it's happening in year 1.
Right.
I guess if I have to admit to anything of, again, just how quickly it came together, because not that they had anything stacked against them, but it's very hard sometimes in this sport to put new people and new things together, and it's rare to have it come together that quickly.
So that's the Joe Gibbs Racing side of the equation. That's 2 of the 4. One little proviso on that as well. Kelly, in our last chat, you mentioned that Joe Gibbs Racing maybe isn't, of the big three teams, is maybe the least dialed in on a recurring basis to Phoenix as a track.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a potential curveball? I mean, I know that Denny's got a win at Phoenix back in 2019. Briscoe's, in fact, everybody in the final four, Championship 4, has won at Phoenix at least once. But I mean, is this Joe Gibbs kind of, slightly on the back foot based on, as you say, they may not have as instant a read on the track as, say, a Hendrick?
I think that, to me, is the question of this weekend, is how much better prepared is Joe Gibbs Racing for this race? Because you're right, we talked about it. That was the biggest question to me. Going into this round, if a Gibbs car advanced to the championship, why would this year be different for them at Phoenix Raceway? And as soon as Denny Hamlin won at Las Vegas, that was the first question that I asked both his crew chief, Chris Gale, as well as former crew chief, now competition director, Chris Gabehart, was, okay, why is this going to be different? What are you guys going to do different at Phoenix that's going to keep you more in the ballpark and give Denny and now Chase Briscoe, who's in, give these guys an opportunity? To them, there really wasn't an answer because Chris Gale's never done this before, right? Chris Gale at the Cup Series level has never competed for a championship. So maybe it works to his advantage of, hey, fresh set of eyes, fresh set of thoughts. I'm going to go in there the way we've been doing things. I'm not going to worry and get caught up in what's happened to this team in the past.
Do they recognize collectively that maybe they aren't as sort of on the ball at Phoenix as some of the tracks? Yeah,
right, for sure, because they understood where the question was coming from, right? And for Chris Gabehart, he admitted the same thing. Hey, I can't give you a crystal ball of we are going to be different, but I can tell you, hey, look at how good we were in the spring when Bell won that race and all those cars ran well. And look at how far we've evolved our packages as this year has gone on, right? Mm-hmm. So, again, I think that's the question. And we're going to find out as soon as we get into practice and qualifying. Teams are going to be able to kind of size each other up pretty quickly. And I think that we'll know for sure once we get there early in the weekend if they feel like they've unloaded with something that's close. So that is as I said, that's the question of the weekend. I do expect them to be closer because
right.
Because again, I feel like if you look at what the organization has done as a whole this year on flatter type racetracks, short tracks, just their those type of race packages, they are better. So I think with a clean slate for somebody like Chris Gale, as I said, and even James Small, who has gone there, and that 19 team, let's be honest, you have to throw away past statistics because what they're doing now is not relevant to what they've done before. So I expect them to be closer, but I also expect that to be a narrative of the weekend. How much better are they going to be this time around?
Okay, so in the Toyota corner, there you go. We've set it up with Joe Gibbs Racing, the Hall of Famer with unfinished business and the new kid on the block. Over to the Chevy corner then. 2 Hendrick Motorsport cars. 2021 champion Kyle Larson, 2024 Daytona 500 winner, and as you say, regular season winner William Byron. Out of the two of them, Kyle Larson, I mean, he's the guy who hasn't had a win amongst the Championship 4 contenders in this round of 8 that has set us up for this weekend, but appears to be the more consistent one over the course of the last few weekends. I mean, is he the guy who has got the building momentum, or is there nothing in it between him and Byron in terms of who is bringing the noise for Hendrick?
Yeah, I think they're pretty even. That's a really good point that you make, but I feel like they're pretty even because Larson not only hasn't won in the round of 8, but that team hasn't won since May, which we talked about in this conversation, right? But if you look at their numbers...
The Indy 500 hangover, I think you kind of alluded to.
Yeah.
True or whatever.
They had a summer of slump, I guess you could call it. But again, if you look at their numbers, I think any other driver would want to take that so-called slump they were in.
Right.
Because they've still been leading laps and running up front. But yes, I think these are the two most even Hendrick cars that there is in that stable of the 5 and the 24. And, the same thing I said about Joe Gibbs Racing, talking about what their race package is, how they've evolved. You can clearly see that at Hendrick Motorsports as well, because the flat short tracks have been a struggle for them. And even though they've gone to Phoenix and contended for championships before, they've not been as strong as they know they need to be there. So you can see the progress that they've made this year, how strong they were at Loudon, how strong they were in St. Louis. Larson, Cliff Daniels, and the 5 team they were a part of the tire test that was at St. Louis earlier this year.
Right.
And everybody at Hendrick Motorsports has been referencing that test as how important that was for all 4 teams to dig into that information and that data. And you can tell how much better off they've all been at some of these racetracks that they've struggled at in the past. So I think that they are definitely even in that regard. And that's why, going back to our opening, I think that will make this such a fascinating and good championship race, because I think all 4 of these teams, again, I don't think there's a favorite. I think they all have their strengths and their weaknesses, but I think overall, it kind of levels the playing field to where you can't predict what's going to happen this weekend. So the Hendrick cars, I think you have to flip a coin for
Right.
who you think is going to be the favorite.
With Kyle Larson, as you say, 2021, that was a heck of a finale. Things moved, around sort of like, but he knows how to stick it out and how to win a championship just based on 2021. That sort of experience, will that be a factor, do you feel, when push comes to shove this weekend? The fact that he knows how to win a title?
No, just because you can make the argument all 4 of these guys know how to.
Yeah.
Chase Briscoe hasn't won a title. Denny Hamlin hasn't won a title. William Byron hasn't won a title. But they have all competed for a championship in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
This is the 3rd straight year William Byron is in the Final 4. Kyle Larson has been in the Final 4 a couple times before, including winning that championship. Chase Briscoe has competed for championships in the Xfinity Series. He had Denny Hamlin, we've talked about, has been here, has competed for it. So I don't know if unlike some other years that you can make that argument.
Right.
There are other groups of 4 drivers that I think maybe, sometimes, experience, been here, done that, can stand out. But these 4 drivers, again, in some form or fashion, have all competed for a championship. The only one, if you want to ding or say it's a blemish, maybe you could say is Briscoe, because he hasn't done it at the Cup level.
Okay. Yep.
But other than that, because of, all of their past career experience, I don't know if, because someone has been to Phoenix and done this before, if that's really going to matter with this group of drivers.
We're looking at Hendrick. We're looking at JGR. We've got a couple of guys, obviously, who aren't in the title contention. But for instance, the likes of Chase Elliott, of Alex Bowman, of Christopher Bell. What could they do? I'm not saying this in a sort of underhand way, but how could they be factors in the outcome? The teammates who aren't in the championship for.
That's always going to be kind of a lingering secondary storyline, right? Because unlike other sports, NASCAR puts its championship contenders out there with other guys who are not in it, and they're just, but they are still racing for a win.
They want to win. They want to finish the season with a win.
Or they are racing for a points finish, or to bump up their whatever it may be. So that has always been, kind of the underlying secondary story in this sport. Now, to your point, though, I mean, there are a lot of really good drivers and really good teams that are not in the Final 4. So where my mind automatically goes is back to, I want to say, 2023, when Ryan Blaney won the championship, but it was the first time in a long time that the champion did not win the race.
Yeah.
because Ross Chastain, who wasn't in the championship, won the race.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if the champion this weekend wins the race. But I also, Lawrence, hand to God, I would not be surprised, to your point, if the champion this weekend didn't win the race.
Right.
Because, I expect Christopher Bell to be very good at Phoenix. I expect the Penske cars, which, again, that's been the whole conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
Phoenix. So, yes, the championship 4 always seem to be head and shoulders above everybody else. So, yes, I wouldn't be. You expect them to go win the race, but it's not impossible for somebody else to go play spoiler and, steal part of the headlines by going out like Chastain did a couple years ago and winning that race. So that's I think that's very possible to happen this year.
If there is a bunch of, as you say, a couple of Penske guys, we'll come on to those in a minute as well about why we're not seeing a Penske guy in the in the Final Four, but a couple of those and Elliott, whatever, packing out, say, the top 3 or 4 places. Is there a point where, you bring in stage points, et cetera, where the top guy of the championship 4, in terms of where they finish at the end of the race, may not be the champion just based on what's been accrued through? Could there be a messy finish if it isn't a sort of like a winner takes all results? Messy, relatively speaking, but.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know because, listen, points don't matter, to those guys. It's not about stage points. It's not about, trying to, choose points over finish. It's all about the finish. It is, you're just going to be watching what are your 3 competitors doing. So as long as, again, going back, the 2023 example, as long as you're beating the other 3 guys, like Ryan Blaney. Yeah, Ryan Blaney wants to win a race because he wants to win a race and the championship. But they also had to remind him, hey, big picture, you don't need to drive it off in there and really, try to wrestle with Ross Chastain for a race win because we're winning the war. We're winning the bigger picture here. So I don't think it'll get messy in any regard because we've seen this year in and year out of it's pretty straightforward. Those 4 guys are going to focus on each other and what they got going on, and it always just works out to where they're always just at the front of the they're always at the front of the field.
Yeah.
So I expect more of that this weekend.
Going back to Ryan Blaney then, almost in the championship 4, but as you pointed out, for the first time since 2021, we do not have a Team Penske entry in the championship 4. No Joe Logano, the guy who, whatever anybody else does, then sort of wins it in the final race. No Ryan Blaney. I mean, I guess that was more roll of the dice stuff than any sort of, Penske wasn't sort of, firing or whatever. It was just sort of whatever happened in Martinsville yesterday, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the round of 8, the drivers will tell you that the round of 8 is the you must win round. You can get through the first 2. If you have points to your advantage and you don't shoot yourselves in the foot, you can get through the first 2 rounds. You're expected to get through the first 2 rounds. But when you get to the round of 8, that's the round that every driver will tell you have to win. You have to win. So when you don't, it makes it that much harder, and it puts you in a position where we saw 4 drivers yesterday below the cut line that had to win the race because points were not on their side. That's not to say that Team Penske, didn't show up in the round of 8. It's 2 different things here. You look at, in the case of Joey Logano, that team did not have the points that I'm talking about. They did not have the insurance points to fall back on. So Joey's margin of error was much smaller than everybody else's. So he basically was in a must-win since week 1, at Las Vegas. And when you don't win and you don't finish top 5, as I said, those points, you're just getting further and further and further behind. So he definitely, as I said, this was a must-round win for him. For Blaney, I think you could probably argue that if Las Vegas goes a different way for him, he may not have had to have won Martinsville. But that tire issue at Vegas and not getting any points, any stage points, because he exited before the first stage was even over. When you only earn 1 point in a race,
Absolutely.
he's basically was in a must win for the next 2 weeks. So that's what the round of 8 is. And as I said earlier, we had a round of 8 this year that the drivers felt like was probably the most competitive, if not one of the most competitive rounds of 8 that we've had. So it made the job much harder. Again, it put it to where we went to Martinsville on Sunday and, we didn't have a points battle. It was, it was everybody had to win.
Yep.
So again, I don't think that's to say Team Penske just didn't show up or they were doing anything wrong. It's just that's how the points fell for them before they even got into this round. And again, it put them behind the 8 ball. On the flip side, William Byron, he goes and wins Martinsville, but he was only pushed into that spot because he lost about 50 something points between Las Vegas and Talladega,
Yep.
where if he had finished where he ran those 2 weeks, he wouldn't have been in a must win at Martinsville, So it's all about how the points shake before you get into the round of 8. And then by then it's just, you have to win you have to win that round. And we see it every year. The drivers who win in the round of 8 are the ones that, obviously are always going to the championship. And other than that 4th driver is normally the guy that just had the points to fall back on.
Which is Larson in this case. Yeah.
And again, Larson had the points to fall back on because he came in as the number 1 seed with 30-something playoff points, and his team did what they had to do at Las Vegas. And even though he stumbled at Talladega, because he gobbled up more points at Las Vegas, they were already sitting well above the cut line. So it's
hypothetical here for you, Kelly. Was given how Ryan Blaney came through the field yesterday, and given what was at stake, was he too nicey, do you think, in the final few laps? I mean, if there'd been a bit of Ryan Blaney chrome horn action, do you think that?
I think that is subjective to how you view what you want a driver to do.
Right.
Or what you would enjoy seeing a driver do.
Uh-huh.
In my opinion, there is a difference between moving someone and wrecking someone, right?
Yeah.
And, honestly, I thought that's what it was going to come down to Saturday in the Xfinity Series race, right? Because all those guys who were running like 1, 2, 3, 4 at the end of that race, they all needed to win. And even though it was teammates versus teammates, and I was like, well, you don't have to wreck them, but you're going to have to move them. So for Blaney, first off, let me say this. I talked to Blaney post-race, and I asked him, a couple different questions, about exactly that. And it's not Ryan Blaney's style to drive into a corner and junk somebody anyway.
Yeah.
But even if he wanted to move Byron, just knock him up a lane, kind of return the favor, so to speak, Blaney admitted, listen, I was never even close enough to do that.
Right.
He never had the opportunity. You have to be there first. You have to be close enough to do that. And Byron never gave him the chance because he drove off both times. That he drove off after getting the lead, and then he drove off on the final restart. So Blaney never even had an opportunity to knock him out of the way. So hypothetically, would he have? I think he would have moved him for sure. I think he would have definitely, because again, to Ryan's point, I never even had the opportunity if I wanted to knock him up a lane.
Right. Yeah.
But again, there's a difference between knocking someone a lane up on a short track and junking them. So
Sure.
I definitely think there would have been contact if given the opportunity, but I don't think it would have been egregious. I don't think it would have been, sending someone, into the wall and junking their equipment. But in that situation, when you have 2 drivers, as they both admitted, not only racing for a win, but racing for a win that moves you into the championship race, you're gonna have some contact. You're gonna have some fisticuffs. It's gonna get physical, and that's what it was when Byron took the lead.
Exactly.
He saw his opportunity and he took it. So yeah, I think there would have been contact for sure, but there was never an opportunity for that to happen.
So based on that, the 4 that we have got then on Sunday, we've got our 2 JGR guys, we've got Denny Hamlin, we've got Chase Briscoe, we have our 2 Hendrick Motorsport guys, a 2021 champion Kyle Larson and William Byron. Not putting you on the spot because you've obviously mulled this over, but Kelly, who's your favourite on Sunday?
So I think we did this the last time we talked, and I was joking about how my bracket, because
You named everyone, I named everyone.
yeah, we the RACER bracket challenge that we set up on NASCAR.com. I had 7 of the 8 in the round of 8, and I have 3 of the 4 in the championship.
Oh, right.
So I'm actually kind of still on.
Who's your outlier? Who wasn't in your 4 then?
Chase Briscoe.
Okay.
So I had him in the round of 8. I did not have him in the round of 4. I had Blaney alongside.
Right.
So I had the 24, the 5, the 11, and the 12. So Briscoe broke that for me. But my championship pick is still alive. So if I stay true to what I filled out on the NASCAR.com in our RACER bracket challenge back when the playoff started, I had the 24. So
okay.
I will stick to what I said 9 weeks ago, that it'll be the 24.
Okay, back at you then. My heart is saying Denny Hamlin.
Yeah.
You've given me enough provisos that I'm thinking that is my heart, maybe not my head.
Yeah.
But I'm with you on William Byron. I'm with you on the 24. Just sort of putting enough of it together that we end up with an extremely worthy champion.
Yeah.
In William Byron, a guy who in that case would have done the Daytona 500 title double, but. Yeah. But yeah, my heart says just Denny, tick the box.
It's a cliche, Lawrence, and I know I've done this in this conversation. I did it in our last conversation when we previewed the round of 8, but you truly can make an argument for anybody. It was funny because when I did my post-race interview at Martinsville with Kyle Larson, I said, okay, real quick, you're just out of the car. It just happened. But first thoughts on your championship competition. And I thought Larson actually summed it up really well when it comes to these 4 drivers, because you have the 5 team, right? You have Larson, who they can get it done anyway, anywhere. Mm-hmm. They've got a lot of confidence always, again, been there, done that. You have William Byron, who's going to have the momentum coming off of Martinsville. The 24 team has done this the last 2 years, right? So they've got the experience. They know what to expect. And we talked about how Hendrick has improved their short track, flat track package. Then he looked at Denny and he's like, listen, Denny, he's just good everywhere. He was good in the spring. He can get the job done anywhere. Chase Briscoe, he always finds a way to get to the front. They've come so far this year. And as he said about Briscoe, he said, he's just a gamer. He's just fast. He's going to figure out how to get there. So I think Larson kind of summed it up perfectly. You can make an argument truly for any one of these 4 drivers.
So we're both kind of saying Byron, but we're not.
Well, I am saying Byron because I'm going to stick to what I picked, but I will admit this. And Lawrence, in our jobs, we don't root for drivers, you root for stories.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to lie to anybody. Denny Hamlin would be the best story.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's not just because of the lawsuit and all that. Yes, it makes it more fascinating. But in my opinion, he makes the best story because he is a first ballot Hall of Famer already with everything he's accomplished, with how many times he's tried to win this championship. So yes, to me, I root for stories. I root for what I want to see in that regard. I think that would be an excellent story of these, but all 4 of them would be. But yes, sentimentally, I think Denny gets the nod of these 4 drivers.
No, well put there, Kelly. Obviously, we are into the stories. And by the way, okay, we've got 2 of the championships to be sorted this weekend. We've got the Xfinity Series where we have the revelation of the season, Connor Zilic, but a really sort of tough final 4 there, a championship 4 there, and Justin Allgaier, the reigning champion, the veteran, the guy who, again, we maybe can't read too much into. You've been there before, you've sort of done it, but do you see that as a showdown between Connor Zilic and Justin Allgaier? I mean, we've got Conor Kvappel, another amazing rookie. We've got Jesse Love, but what's the vibe on the Xfinity Series with you?
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly. I think the expectation is a Connor Zilic, Justin Allgaier showdown. I mean, we touched on it in our last podcast. I mean, Connor and Justin have been, I feel like, the class of the field in the Xfinity Series this year. Mm-hmm. Connor, of course, stands above, right, because the win column has been so impressive. But I do think it's been pretty even between the 88 and the 7 over there. Carson Kvapil and his team, they grind it out. I mean, they are so impressive with just the things they've done this year. And for Carson being a young, inexperienced driver, so to speak, and the way he has quickly developed. And then Jesse Love, I mean, listen, Richard Childress Racing makes it known over there that they grind things out. They're blue-collar people. They fight, scratch, and claw. And you can see that on the racetrack with the type of driver that Jesse Love is. He's going to go there and he's going to fight. So, yes, I think the 88 and the 7 stand above everybody else, but I also think that title fight, like the Cup one, will be very, very competitive. Listen, we saw it last year when the Xfinity Series with Phoenix. That was a heck of a race last year with the 4 drivers that they had. So I expect more of that this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the most entertaining and best race of the weekend. Yep. Because the Xfinity Series is known to do that. But again, because I believe that Final 4 is just as competitive as what we have in the Cup Series.
Craftsman Truck Series, the Heiminator, Corey Heim, the guy. This is incredible. Kelly, obviously they have a slightly shorter in terms of number of races playoffs, but 6 races. Corey Heim has already won 4 of them. I mean, you'll probably talk me out of this when you start applying logic to it, but this possibly with Corey Heim seems the most sort of like clear-cut Heim will be champion.
It does. And certainly when you look at who his competition is, and I know that's going to come off as insulting to the other 3 drivers, but when Lane Riggs didn't advance to the championship 4, I will admit, I sat here, I looked at it, and I said, well, that makes it even easier and a better path for Corey Heim to win this championship. So, look, all 4 teams, when you go to a championship race, you bring your absolute best of the best. You are going to be on it. You're going to be ready to go. But that title fight is the one that I have the least expectations for. If Corey Heim doesn't blow an engine or somebody doesn't drive over him for some reason, I don't think it's going to be close. I don't see it being as competitive as the other 2 at all. So that again, no disrespect to those 4 drivers, but numbers are numbers, stats are stats, and my eyes have watched the last 20-something weeks of that series. There's no competition for that 11 truck unless there are outside variables that for some reason level the playing field. And I don't see that happening.
Well, Kelly, you are going to be on the ground for us in Phoenix this weekend. Every nuance, every twist and turn, we'll get the full story on racer.com. So thank you very much for joining us. Just to remind everybody that we basically said we think it's going to be William Byron, but we've done so many sort of get out of jail and provisos attached to that. But Kelly, as you say, the story will unfold over the weekend. They will bring off the hauler. We'll start to get a bead on it through Friday. But this is going to be a fascinating one. So thank you for not only setting the scene, but also giving us so much insight on the contenders. So we'll let you head to Phoenix and unravel the story.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy week. I'm glad that we could do this and get it in and preview it, because I do, as we talked about, I think it's going to be an incredible weekend, but a lot to come still this week before we even get out there. So it'll be a good one. I'm ready for it. And again, I think I'm excited because I think it's one of the most competitive years that we've had. And I think whoever comes out on Sunday is going to give us a lot to talk about. So I'm ready for it. One more. We've made it.
We have, and then 10 weeks off and then back in action again or whatever. No, actually,
gosh,
no,
don't do that.
3 months. 3 months. Sorry,
Yeah.
I panicked you there.
Don't do that to me. This off season is short enough as it is before we start counting days. So
No, that was my bad math. Hey, Kelly, thank you so much for joining us. And I say we will follow it through the weekend. And here's to 3 extraordinary outcomes and here's to 3 extraordinary races. So thank you very much.
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks.